Good afternoon. My name is Alastair Macphail, and I'd like to welcome you all to this Learning Connects broadcast, which is brought to you by the European Training Foundation, the EU agency that supports countries in developing their education, training, and employment systems to improve opportunities for people. Now, right at the moment, we're in the run-up to a major international conference organized by the European Training Foundation and UNESCO, in collaboration with the ILO, EBRD and UNICEF, and it's going to take place in the week of the 21st to the 25th of June. So that's in a little over 2 weeks' time. Now, the theme of the conference is building lifelong learning systems for green and inclusive societies in the digital era. Now, as I think we are all aware, because we see this happening around us, the world is experiencing a major transformation. People are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and then digitalization and greening and alongside other global trends are transforming the way we work and the way we live. And the COVID-19 pandemic has gone a long way towards accelerating these trends. And these are changing the jobs we do, they're changing the way we do them, and they're changing the skills that we need to do them. And it's not just about skills for work, it's also about skills for life. And more broadly, insofar as digitalization and greening are changing the way we interact with they change our relationship with other people, they're changing our relationship with the world around us. It's also a matter of citizenship and participation in society. The purpose of the conference is to take stock of the changes that we're experiencing and look at their implications for education and training systems. The conference is going to be broadcast live on all of our social media channels and also on our website. And we will be sharing links in the chat to this broadcast so that you can connect with us and express an interest in the different parts of the conference which interest you. And in terms of its structure, the conference will involve a short opening session, which will take place on Monday, the 21st of June at 9 o'clock. And then we will be taking a deep dive into different aspects of the challenge facing us. There are going to be 6 thematic sessions. That's 2 sessions per day, looking at different topics. They will be on Monday 21st, Tuesday 22nd, and Wednesday 23rd. And the week will end with 2 days of a high-level event, which will bring together policymakers, experts, practitioners, employers, international organizations, experts, donors, and civil society representatives to draw all the threads together and reflect on what we need to do to make it all happen. So the purpose of this live broadcast is to give you a sneak preview of these 6 thematic sessions to help you decide which you would like to follow. And I'm going to give the floor to the ETF experts who are leading these different sessions so that they can tell you what they're all about and why you should follow them. Except we have one exception, and that's Iwona Ganko, who is leading the very first session on adapting to changing skills demands. Unfortunately, she hasn't been able to join us today. So I'm afraid you'll have to make do with my rendition of what the session's about and why you should come and join us. So I'm talking here about session number 1, which will be on Monday, the 21st of June at 10:30. And it's going to be about adapting to changing skills demand. And we're going to be looking at how the demand for skills is changing under the influence of global drivers of change like globalization, automation, artificial intelligence, climate change. And it will examine how education and training systems can accompany people in navigating this changing and challenging landscape as they move through their lives. And I can think of 3 good reasons to follow this session. One is that the ETF has a lot of very interesting findings from studies that we have been conducting about changing skills demand, about the impact of migration, about new forms of work, and these will be shared during this session. I think the main reason here is that this really is the nub of the whole issue. The world is changing around about us, and how do we help people adapt to shifting context? And I think last and probably not least, it's going to be a lively, stimulating and interactive discussion. So that's so much for session number 1. Session number 2 is going to be on Monday the 21st at 1:30 in the afternoon, 13:30. And the topic here is new forms of learning. So we're moving from what people need to learn to how they learn it. And I'm pleased to pass the floor to Jolien Van Uden, one of our top experts, who will tell you more about this topic. So Jolien.
Yes, thank you, Alastair. The session New Forms of Learning is about meaningful and engaging learning environments. Environments that offer relevant content in authentic context. And environments that invite learners to explore, to make mistakes, collaborate, and to take ownership of their own learning. The session is about creating positive learning experiences. And more importantly, what we need to create those experiences and how we can overcome any challenges we might face creating those meaningful and engaging learning environments. Why are these meaningful and engaging learning environments so important? In this fast-changing world with the digital and green transition, we are all lifelong learners. And most of us here today, like following this session, this event, and working on lifelong learning, probably enjoy learning. We sometimes forget that this is not the case for everyone. Imagine that you would always have been the person in class with the lowest grades. How would you have felt? Or maybe you rather run around, move, use your hands, instead of sitting behind a desk and listening. If we would like people to keep learning, we need to provide them with positive learning experiences. Experiences that will motivate them to enroll in new learning activities again and again. So why join this session? First of all, to get inspired by 3 very interesting practices and to learn from the speakers what enabled them to implement those practices. But also to discuss together what challenges we might face introducing more meaningful and engaging learning environments, and more importantly, to come up with solutions to overcome these challenges. If this doesn't convince you yet, some hints on the inspiring practices. It will be about dream machines, theater as forms of learning, and augmented reality. See you on Monday, 21st of June.
Okay, thank you, Jolien. You're convincing me. I wonder if you're convincing some of our listeners out there. I'm just looking through the chat here. We've got Adnan Mubarak from Pakistan. Hi, Adnan. We've got somebody here from Geneva, Aida Ailarova. Thank you for joining us. We've got Ilaria Favero from Bangkok, Thailand. So we really have an international audience. Please get on the chat, tell us where you're from and share your ideas and share your questions with us. We're looking forward to having a bit of an open discussion as later on in the program when everyone's made their pitches. So thank you very much, Jolien. I think we now have the 3rd session, which is on Tuesday, 27th, is at 9 o'clock, and it's on the role of actors. So we've gone from what to learn, how to learn it, and now, how to organize learning. So I'll pass the floor to ETF expert Siria Taurelli to convince us to join this amazing session. So Siria.
Thank you, Alastair. I want at least to convince you to join the session, Role of Actors in Lifelong Learning Systems, which will talk about everyone who is involved in creating a system for lifelong learning. This is a process that will affect all aspects of the systems, and with that, it will therefore affect everyone who contributes to lifelong learning, to human capital development, people and institutions. And with that, we mean both the institutions that operate on the side of the state, the governmental side, the national agencies, ministries, local governments, as well as the state of the actors of non-state environment, which comprise Chamber of Commerce, social partners, as well as civil society organizations. So the move from the training education system as we know it now onto lifelong learning systems can only happen if it involves all these actors from all sides, including those who are typically not that engaged in education and training in the sense of the formal system. So in our session, we will speak about partnerships. Partnership is a key idea in order to engage the various actors. Both state, non-state actors, they will need to cooperate on the new framework. They will need to explore also new ways and forms of cooperation, new mechanisms to make their joint endeavor more impactful and more effective. And the second issue we will be discussing in our session is how to ensure the mobilization of sufficient resources. Lifelong learning systems have a greater coverage of people, they have to reach out to many different type of groups of population responding to a diversity of needs. Therefore, it's very likely that more resources will be needed. And when we talk about resources, we think to the financial resources, budgetary resources, of course, but also non-financial resources, such as expertise, capacities, and motivation. And these two issues of partnerships and new models of partnership, as well as the resource mobilization, they intersect very clearly the question of digitalization and greening. If we have to develop the skills, competence, and provide and enhance human capital to each and every one to be able to cope, to live and operate in such a new environment, we need more engagement. We need everybody to be on board, and we need everyone in the society to be able to access good quality learning. Hence, we look forward to hearing from you, from the speakers, but also from the audience about models of partnerships and mobilization of financial and non-financial resources. Back to you, Alastair.
Okay, so I think you've certainly convinced us about the importance of this topic. I think resources, funding, mobilization absolutely are vital to making things happen. So I think, thank you for that. I'd just like to say hi to some Ahad Kazimov from Azerbaijan who's following us, and I've got Ioana here from somewhere in Denmark, I think, and Daria in Turin. Please keep your questions coming. We've already got a few questions there. We're going to keep them until all the presentations have been made. But please, keep telling us who you are, where you're from, and share your ideas and your questions with us. So moving on from, how do we organize the systems to, I think another important thing is how do we know if we're having any impact? So I'm going to bring in Mihaylo here and say goodbye to Siria for a moment. The fourth session is on Tuesday the 22nd at 11:30, and it's about monitoring and adapting. So Mihaylo, if you could put your camera on so that we can see you. What happened to you?
It's quite an interesting thing, but my camera says it's on, but at the same time you can't see me. So what I could try to do is perhaps to press the right button and hope that it will work. Do you see me now?
No, I don't. So
that's very strange. But in any case, I can, of course.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Mihaylo. We'll bring you back on in a minute, and we'll move on to, if you can try and sort out the technical.
I'll restart.
Yes. And in the meantime, I'm going to bring Cristina in. This is Cristina Mereuta. Cristina is going to be leading the 5th session, which is on Wednesday, the 23rd of June, on the subject of skills for all. And this session is going to look at the vital issue of how to involve everyone in learning and how to avoid people getting left behind. So Cristina, convince us why we should follow your session.
Good afternoon, and thanks a lot. It's my pleasure to join you in this discussion. Yeah, it's rather difficult to convince you on a rather old-fashioned topic, providing skills for all, and sounds a bit like a slogan. And I think what I want to make clear, that what we try and we will try in our session is to move away from slogans and to discuss about affordable solutions, and to really have a fair reflections if we have the right conditions in place, if we have the right ingredients, and how to learn from each other on providing more opportunities to learning, but most important, providing quality education opportunities, because quality is the most important word in this discussion. It's not about numbers, it's about people, and it's about quality and relevance of skills. What we will maybe to say about the points that we will touch in the session is we will look at how to foster on modalities and measures on fostering opportunities for learning and gaining skills that are accessible and beneficial to all, that are learner-centric. We will maybe also have the time to exchange a bit on the impact of COVID and how much we lost in terms of education attainment and relevance of skills during this period, and what kind of remedial actions we need to put in place. Then we will also look at the digital and greening transitions and how this impacts the need to reskill people, to upskill people. And we know from practice that in this kind of huge change in labor demand and so on, those that are vulnerable are left behind. Yeah, so those workers or inactive or unemployed with low skills, low level of education are not always present in the in participation in education and so on. Then we would also look on clear, simple, straightforward solutions, how to save resources, how to improve the education performance and avoid early school leaving, for example, and also to shift. And the biggest call is now, and it sounds like a slogan, I agree, how do we shift from ad hoc remedial interventions to holistic and timely interventions? Now, we know that the access to training and education is a challenge everywhere, be it in advanced countries, be it a medium level or a low income country. It's a challenge everywhere, particularly in these times. And it's indeed a call for us as policymakers, researchers, experts, learners, is to move away from this understanding of education like a linear process, which set milestones along our life, to move away and to build up flexible pathways, learning at any stage in life and in various contexts, be it at work, be it at home, be it abroad, be it online. Finally, why should you join our session? Definitely we will engage with, we will have with us colleagues from the ETF partner countries and EU member states to share their successes, but also to fairly reflect on the challenges. We try to have a hands-on experience sharing. We will try to have a fair reflection and to look at affordable solutions. And most importantly, to hear the voice of young people, yeah, because, okay, young people are the future, but they know best what they would expect from the education and training system now and tomorrow. And on this occasion, I want to also say hello to Ilaria and Aida from UNICEF, because this research and the fact that we are able also to present the feedback from young people is also thanks to UNICEF. We partnered with them to get together this opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cristina. I'd just like to say hi to Saram Heyang from Cambodia. So just to show what an international audience we've got here, and to Jobten Bosch. He says he specializes in habit development, and habits are an overlooked part of trainings and courses. So I hope that Job, that you will join us in the conference and share some of your ideas on this. I hope we're talking about good habits and not bad habits. So I see we've got Mihaylo here again. So we can see his smiling face. I'll say goodbye to Cristina for a second, and just to remind now then, Mihaylo's session is going to be on Tuesday the 22nd at 11:30 in the morning, and it's about monitoring and adapting. I think a very important part of any change process is knowing whether change is happening and whether things are moving in the right direction. So Mihaylo, convince us.
Thank you very much. I'm happy that I've solved the first hurdle towards the discussion. I made my camera work, and we hope to resolve a few other
digital skills.
Yes, this is like a total proof that I'm ready for the session, and I just wanted to say what the session is about. In fact, we talk about change, about how the environment is changing in which we do our work, in which we acquire skills. And of course, we also discuss how education and training systems need to adapt accordingly. So change is really the flavor of the day, system change even more so. And so the question is, if we change so much, if we really commit to adapting and to trying to find ways not to business as usual, how do we actually know that we are changing in the right direction? So this is like one of the questions that we want to cover in this session. How exactly do we decide which kind of data, which kind of information is relevant for us to track whether we are moving and getting where we want to get? Another question which is very important is, how do we in fact know and how we make other people believe us? It's very easy if you're a decision maker to say, yeah, I know we're going in the right direction, just trust me. So is there a way to arrange for a process of monitoring change, for a process of monitoring success, but also failure, which is credible, where there's a trust between all of those who are involved, who depend on the change, who have stakes in the change, and also those who are responsible for making this change happen? So the second question is there some good ways, what kind of experiences do countries have in arranging for a process of monitoring, which is inclusive and which is credible, where the results are something that we all can agree on and believe? And finally, even if we have these two things in place, we know what we want to monitor and we know how to do it, still there's the open question, what do we do with the results? Very often when we have evidence, sometimes decision makers decide to ignore it, or perhaps they decide to interpret it in a way that is comfortable, but perhaps not entirely correct. So the third question in the session that we want to discuss is about how to use the results of monitoring. And so these three questions: what do we monitor? How do we organize an inclusive and trustworthy process of monitoring? And three, how do we use the evidence in order to adapt and make our plans even better? These are the three questions that we hope to cover. We will have a group of practitioners, researchers, representatives from international organizations who are going to share their experiences with this, because this topic is not new and the challenges that it poses are not new, but perhaps some of their practices and insights are new and can help us all find a way to move ahead. So we'll have a group of practitioners, and I hope that you all find it interesting enough to join, because yes, trust in the evidence we have about change is something that in fact concerns all of us. So the session, like I said, is on the 22nd of June. It starts at 11:30 Central European Time, and we hope to discuss, or at least touch upon, all these things within the 2 hours which we have. We also have a range of quite interesting people in the session, so you're very welcome to join. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mihaylo. You made a good point there, just reminding that you know, that we have an international audience, and that all the times that I've been quoting are Central European time, so Rome, Berlin, etc. So bear that in mind if you're away off. Like I think we have somebody following Sadreddin Niyozov. I don't know where you're from, but judging by the name, I would imagine somewhere in Central Asia. So remember that you're going to be 5 hours ahead of whatever is happening here in Turin. So thanks, Mihaylo. And I think I'd just like to bring in Anastasia here, who's going to talk about the final session. Now, the final session is on supporting the green transition. As we know, the environmental impact of the way we live is increasingly unsustainable, and that education and training have a very important role to play in the transition to a clean, circular, carbon neutral economy, and supporting certainly in this corner of the world where we live, supporting the EU Green Deal in the European Union and in its partner countries. So, Anastasia, tell us some more.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you, Alastair, and hello to all those who are with us today. So, what is the session all about? It is about one thing: the power of education and training to make our societies greener and sustainable. Alastair mentioned the European Green Deal. There are international agreements like the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, that point all of us, governments, businesses, citizens, towards a greener society, because this is a must for our present and our future. But in order for this green transition to succeed, we need people. It can only be achieved if people are part of it, all of us. And in order to be part of this transition, what do we need as people? We need the technical skills to be able to apply new eco-friendly technologies in different workplaces. It doesn't matter if it is in high-tech companies or in small farms. We need the right competencies to innovate and interact and communicate, and to be aware about the impact of what we do on the environment, but also on the others. So systemic thinking is extremely important in the world we do. We are all interlinked. But more than technical skills and competencies, what we need is also values and mindsets, maybe to change our habits, to take the point of one of our colleagues that are with us today. So we need values and mindsets to be able to act as responsible consumers and producers, but also as responsible citizens, above all, as responsible citizens of a sustainable planet. Now, there is a lot of, optimism, a lot of positive thinking about the positive impact that this green transition can bring also in terms of employment. But we should not forget that any transition has winners and losers. And there are some people, those who will be involved in non-sustainable economic activities today, that they will need to make an extra effort to move into a greener world. And we have to support these people to make the shift in a successful way. Now, this is, let's say, the analysis of the situation and what we need and how education can help people to be part of the green transition. Going to the action, there is a lot of talking, but there is a lot of action that is taking place today. We had a call earlier in this year to identify green practice in several parts of the world. And we do also a lot of research. We follow the research of other international organizations to see what actors are doing to support this green transition in education and training. So we see a plethora of action by companies, training providers, NGOs, entrepreneurs, and even financial institutions that focuses on directing investment and empower people, after all, to be part of the green transition. And we consider that this experience is valuable because it brings a lot of innovation. We can learn a lot from this experience, get inspired, and build on it. But we also know that if we want to move fast and develop really inclusive, greener societies, we need the lifelong learning policies. We need lifelong learning systems that can ensure that people permanently develop their skills and knowledge in this changing world. So, if you want to know more about how a school can become green, or if you want to know how to develop capacities to deliver education and training that builds green skills, what we call green skills for all the new professions. If you want to know more about how to support people and communities to manage successfully their transition to a greener world through skills development, then you can join our session. But it is not only because you can have access to this experience. It is also because our session will provide the opportunity to share your ideas on what are the policy priorities to build inclusive lifelong learning systems for the green transition. And last but not least, we can hear the voice of young people. We will have a young person that UNICEF has very kindly identified and also results of the common work we have done with UNICEF to understand how young people think about this green transition, what they expect from their schools, do they get what they need and what they would like to have. So this is all from me. I hope you will join our session. Alastair, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anastasia. I'd just like to remind our listeners that we're talking about a major international conference that is organized by the European Training Foundation and UNESCO in cooperation with UNICEF that Anastasia mentioned, and the EBRD and the International Labour Organization. And this is going to happen in the week of the 21st to the 25th of June. So that is that's in less than 3 weeks' time. And this is, all of us are working hard preparing for this and getting quite excited about it. So we're really looking forward to you all joining us. And as I had a question, I think from Daria in Turin, how can people follow this? The ETF will be broadcasting this on all of our social media channels. So it will be broadcast on Facebook, it will be broadcast on LinkedIn, and it will be broadcast on our YouTube channel. It will also be broadcast on our website. So there are lots of opportunities for you to follow this, and lots of opportunities for you to engage with us through the chat. We will be following all of that and picking up questions and reflections from everyone who's following the conference. So thank you very much. We've now had a quick sneak preview of the 6 thematic sessions, which are going to be happening on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week. We now have quite a few comments and questions coming from people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring everybody onto the screen in small, so you can see everybody there if you're following this. And who have I missed? No, I haven't got Anastasia there. Here we go. I think everybody's there now. The first question I think we had was one from a Joanna. It was a direct question to Jolien, and she is asking, Jolien is going to be talking about learning and learning environments and what happens in the process of learning. And Joanna is asking, what is the most engaging learning environment today? So I think, Jolien, can you tell us a little more about this?
Yes, sure. I'm not sure whether I can answer what is the most engaging learning environment today.
I don't know what's happened to Jolien. I don't know that. Okay, let's try something else. I don't know. There seems to be a problem with Jolien.
No, there is no problem with Jolien.
I started talking.
There's a problem with the system. I only see a black. Can you hear us, Jolien? Can you speak?
Yes. Did you hear me before?
Yes, we see and hear her, Alastair.
Only Alastair,
Okay.
I think, doesn't see and hear me. But I will start again. Like I think it's difficult to say to answer the question, what is the most engaging learning environment today? Because I don't think there's one environment that is engaging in all contexts. I think one of the important, we have to take into account several important elements, and I think one of the elements is that is whether there's relevant content. Like, it needs to be clear for learners that the content of a training, of a course, of a session, of a learning activity is relevant for them. Why do they have to learn it? That might be based on what they would like to learn, what they would like to achieve, what is needed. But I think it's very important that it's meaningful, and also that learning these learning outcomes, this content, is a bit challenging, but not too challenging. They should feel like they are able to achieve it, but they have to invest a bit to achieve it. And then I think what I emphasized as well is, for meaningful learning environments, that it's important that it's authentic. Of course, if we look at VET, maybe the most authentic learning contexts are probably the workplace. But we can't learn everything always at the workplace. Sometimes you need to practice, to do some drills. You might need some lectures as well. So with those meaningful and engaging learning environments, we don't say we can't give lectures anymore. Everything has to be active. No, what I think is most important is that it's clear what we are learning, that we try to connect it to life world problems, to real world problems, and that we try to create in many instances something that's real or authentic, like looks authentic. And one of the things I mentioned as well is to have a space where there's place to make mistakes, where you feel you can make mistakes, where you can experiment, and where you receive the feedback you need to move forward in a motivating way. So I will leave it like this for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Jolien. That was really interesting. If moving on, we've got some more questions here from the audience. I'd also like to go to Job ten Bosch, who's out there and is sharing a lot of interesting thoughts in the chat. And I think he's got a question for you, Mihaylo. He says, so how do we know we're moving in the right direction?
Yeah, there is two options to say that. I mean, first we have the session in order to respond to this question, but we might become victims of a collective self-deception, and all of us who depend on a certain reform or idea, we might be delusional that we're actually moving in the right direction while we're actually either reverting to somewhere we don't want to go, or maybe we're not making progress at all. But if you ask us, we would say, well, we're moving in the right direction. Another way, which is probably better, is to ensure that we involve all those people who in fact are targeted by the change, who are stakeholders in the change, who are supposed to benefit from that change, and also see their perspective. Although sometimes this might be difficult to reach out to these people, it might be difficult to listen to them because they might have a differing opinion and so on. So in fact, involvement, engagement, and making sure that we speak a similar language when we talk about change and monitoring change is one of the ways to make sure that although we are convinced we're moving in the right direction, that we're not the only ones who think that way. And so perhaps one of the possible answers is somewhere hidden in the discussion around the second question in our thematic session, which is how do we organize a monitoring process where there is trust, where the results are credible, and where there is sufficient involvement by all people who are concerned by reform. So that could be an attempt at an answer. But in any case, please join the session on the 22nd so that we see whether this initial answer is good enough also for all the others who participate in the session.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mihaylo. I've got another question here from Joanna. I mean, she has picked up on something that you said, Cristina, about moving away from slogans towards affordable solutions. I mean, you know, we talk about lifelong learning, but I mean, what does that actually mean in practice? I mean, can you give an example of what it means to move from slogans towards affordable solutions?
Yes, and I think the answer has already been mentioned by Mihaylo. It's about credible monitoring systems. It's about ambitious targets, but also feasible targets when we look at and we developed education for lifelong learning strategies. It's about having a proper backbone, if I can say that, of the education system and of the skills development systems, and that's the qualification, a clear qualification framework or approach to qualification and how the skills are validated. And it's also about simply how schools work at community level, how they engage with parents, with municipalities, the resourcing, and how learners exposed to early school leaving are helped on time, supported on time, and there are so many different angles. But I think in the session that we will have, I hope that we manage to pick the most relevant examples for our viewers, to convince that although it takes maybe 10, 20, 30 years to build an inclusive lifelong learning system, it works, and there are so many opportunities to engage, to partner, and to use the resources, including the EU funding and donors.
Okay, thanks, Cristina. Now I've got a question here in for Syria. I mean, we've been talk a lot about resources and mobilizing resources. I mean, how, you know, all that we are talking about lifelong learning. How do we persuade governments? How do we persuade societies? How do we persuade employers to invest more in learning than they are today?
Well, this is simply a necessity, because the economy is changing and is now under everybody's eye. It's not about the future, it's about the present. So we see already what the changes are in our society, in our life. We are now all connected digitally, and this is only a tiny example. So the question is, why not to invest more, knowing that what has been invested so far has proven not really sufficient. Systems are lagging behind. Not everybody is able to access good quality opportunities of learning. There is no always offer responsive to needs. There is a lot to do, and we are seeing at present that with the available resources, we are not really making it. So to go to lifelong learning, the implication is that we have to think bigger. Lifelong learning is a different scale. The targets of the European Union are very ambitious. From here till 2030, 60% of adult people in training at least once every year. This is massively more important than what we have now. So in order to increase both the quantity but also the quality, because we care about quality, we need really to believe in our system and to endow the system with resources. It means human resources, well-trained teachers, continuous professional development, as well as equipment, modernizing the opportunity and multiplying the opportunities and the locations for training. We heard from Jolien that environment can be very diverse. We cannot only think about, the classroom. None of us thinks about that, but we have to think ahead and envision a system which is much more open, much more approachable and easy to get into by the people. And this means expanding the opportunity, expanding therefore also the people who are engaged in offering this opportunity for lifelong learning. So lifelong learning is just a different scale, and we need to be consistent with that vision.
Okay, thank you, Siria. I've got a question now for Anastasia. We have a Job ten Bosch who's been very active in the chat there. Thanks, Job. He mentions that he was at one point in his career he was developing a clean tech business, and he found one of the biggest challenges next to financial capital was human capital. So, I mean, what kind of solutions can we imagine for companies that are trying to push into the green sector but are struggling to find qualified personnel?
Well, but I think companies in particular in the energy sector, at least what we see in our partner countries, they are quite active. Obviously, energy is one of the key sectors that is affected by regulation, international regulation, European regulation. I mean, that influences also capacities of funding of new ways of producing energy and renewables. So here we see a sector that is changing drastically, and the companies follow. They do trainings, but of course it depends very much on what happens to people who work in fossil fuel energies, for example. What does it happen to them? How can they develop new skills? There is a huge effort, and this does not affect only people, but also whole communities who are dependent on this type of economic activity. Now, what companies are doing, they're retraining their staff. And even, this is what I said also very briefly before, even financial institutions are getting mobilized very much now to invest in renewables, renewable energy, not only in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of skills development of the people who will need to use these new technologies to produce energy in windmills, I don't know, in solar panels. There is also a lot of regulation in our partner countries. I'm thinking of Ukraine, for example, where there is a regulation for energy efficiency in the buildings. And there are specific trainings organized by the different actors to develop people to develop these skills on how to audit the energy efficiency, but also to go into solutions. So I think that in the field of energy, we don't have problems. In Tunisia, in Morocco, we had also networks of training providers that are getting specialized on solar panels, maintenance on. So I think that the sector of energy, frankly speaking, will not face problems to have people retrained. There are other sectors that maybe will suffer more, you know. In particular, sectors who are in, I don't know, SMEs, in services. There, I think maybe more action will be needed along the lines that my colleague said before, to join efforts, to think in terms of people, companies, and local development actions where actors work together.
Okay, thanks, Anastasia. I think, Anastasia, you mentioned there the project to train building managers in energy efficiency and recycling and so on, which is one of the finalists of our call for green good practice. So I'd just like to remind you of that. I think we can perhaps put the link in the chat there. We have a whole series of really interesting, inspiring examples of good practice that we have that have applied for our Green Good Practice Award, and they will be presented during this conference. And in the meantime, if you can go on the site there, have a look at the stories that we've collected, and see which one you think is the most inspiring, and vote for them. So with all of that, I think we've gone round all the different thematic topics that we're going to cover. I'd just like to remind our listeners that we're talking about a major international conference that the ETF is organizing together with UNESCO and with the cooperation of the ILO, of the EBRD and UNICEF. And it's going to be happening in the week of the 21st to the 25th of June. There will be an opening session. There will be 6 in-depth thematic sessions that we've been discussing today, and there will be a high-level event to close the conference and draw some conclusions. So with all of that, I'd like to thank you, and I'd just like to give the floor to Anastasia, who has played a very important leading role in this. Would you like to say a last word to our audience about the conference and why it's important for them to join us?
Yes, well, first of all, I have to say that this conference has been a joint work of several colleagues. The 5 of us you see here, but there are a lot of other people together with us working to deliver this conference. So it's a joint effort. It's like it's a lifelong learning also for all of us, because many of us who organized learn new things and recognize the need for cooperation to move ahead in big undertakings. So that's one underlying point that I would like to make. The other thing that I would like to say is that lifelong learning is not a new concept. It's something that is going on for years now, this discussion, at least 30 years now, and it continues. Now, the question is that what is different today? Yeah? And this is an important point we will tackle we mentioned a lot of elements, during our presentations today on why it is important today, maybe more than 30 years ago, because the world is changing, because everything is changing, and because people are important and has always been. But if we want to move into change of societies which are human-centric, then we have really to work with people for people. And the final point of reflection that I would like to make in relation to this conference, it is that we will have about 80 speakers taking actively the 4 speakers. We don't talk about all the people who will be there with us as participants and share ideas. It's a big number of people. They will not have the time to make long presentations and prepare their ideas. It will be about 6 minutes each, more or less, And somebody may think, okay, so what? Yeah, will you have time for discussion? I think we will. We have a lot of digital means to facilitate discussion. This is the positive element of digital means of communication today. But it is also important to recognize that the discussion on lifelong learning takes place in different places. Yeah, sometimes in a bit of fragmented way. And what we want to do with this conference is to put these pieces together. The training provision, with the validation of skills, with qualifications, with the role of companies, with regional development. So there is a whole sector development, greening, digitalization. There are all these different discussions that sometimes make confuse us. So I think some conference we aspire at least to do, it is to bring all these things together and try to think in a way exactly which is more systemic, so that we all move forward together. So that's all.
So thank you. Yes. So Anastasia, you were talking about system thinking as being one of the things that the skills that we will all need to develop in this new world. So it's great to see that we are actually walking the talk and not just talking the talk. So with this, I would like to say thank you all. Thank you all to our speakers. Thank you all to our audience out there, the people from all over the world who have been following this. And we look forward to you joining us in the week of the 21st to the 25th of June for a big conference on a big topic with a lot of big people and big ideas. So thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Looking forward to